drew you to it, or why are you doing the work that you're doing?
It was really when I was doing my dissertation. I was still working in the U.S. in Oregon State University. So I came down to UMass looking for a project, and it turned out that there was an opportunity for a job opportunity in UMass. So I actually accepted a position in UMass, and my first project was to work on the Colorado River Delta.
Wow. Who were you working with in UMass?
I was working with Dr. Carlos Valdez at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Director of the research center in the ITESM private school.
Yeah, okay.
So I got involved in 1998. That was my first field trip to the Delta region. And since then I've been, working almost full time on that area.
Now, Carlos came to Sonoran Institute and was here for a bit.
He was here. He was actually my boss for a couple of years, I think. And then he moved back to Mexico.
Oh, is that where he is now?
Yeah, he's in Alamos.
Oh, okay. How are they, his family?
Oh, they're doing great.
Oh,
well, their kids are here.
Oh, okay.
At the U of A. Well, one is at U of A and the other one is here in Tucson.
It's another example of these people that are, in and out of both sides of the border.
Right.
As yourself. And so how long have you been with the Sonoran Institute then?
8 years, since April 2002.
And you're the director of the program?
I'm the director of what we call the Upper Gulf of California Legacy Program.
Okay.
And inside that program is the Colorado River Delta project. In fact, it's the main project within the program.
And you also have another appointment somewhere else? Are you working closely in the U of A?
I work closely with Dr. Flesa. I did my sabbatical there.
Oh, okay.
And then after the sabbatical, work a few hours there with Dr. Flesa. So yeah, I work really closely with him and Laura Lopez. We do have kind of a monitoring group or team for the Cienega Santa Clara. And the Sonoran Institute is working with the U of A in implementing that project.
And is Ed Glenn part of that as well?
Ed Glenn is part of that.
And are there agencies involved, federal agencies, on both sides, or is this mostly U.S.?
No, there are agencies and other institutions on both sides. It's really, this is a binational monitoring program.
How did that get set up? Do you know?
Yeah, it's for about, let me think, maybe, 3 years maybe. Mexico and the U.S. began conversation about, opportunities for binational projects that will benefit both the U.S., Mexico, and also the environment in the Delta region. And among the many different topics, the Cienega Santa Clara was one key issue, and the group decided to develop a binational monitoring program.
Did this happen to the IBWC, or would you say it was an IBWC sort of? Who is the sort of convener of this conversation, or what institution?
It's IBWC, the Mexican and the U.S. section. But the group is a large group with agencies from both sides. I mean, state agencies, federal agencies, and NGOs.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's really interesting.
Very atypical, at least. When I was working with the Sonoran Institute back then, it was very hard for the NGOs to get at the table.
With the IBWC.
Yeah, it took
Herrera
years.
was always great, but the U.S. side was never very good. And then after Bernal, who I knew, who was wonderful, then there was a series of people who were not. So this began when Herrera was still there?
Yeah.
Before the plane accident.
He was still the commissioner in Mexico.
Yeah, well, he was wonderful.
And I was in several meetings where he was leading, the group, or at least, the Mexican section in the meetings.
Right.
So.
Have you met the new Mexican?
Yeah.
What do you?
Roberto Salmon.
Yeah.
He used to be with Conagua in Sonora. So he knows about the water issues and the border issues.
Yeah, someone said he was really, I think someone had said that he was exceptional, that Mexico got really fortunate again, that there's another great...
Well, certainly he knows the area and the water issues, the region, at least, in Baja and Sonora. So...
Go ahead, I didn't mean to.
No, it's good. So, I didn't know where to go.
Well, I think we need to know a little more about the kind of activities he's engaged in, both this project and the one about water.
Actually, I do have a question. Why the Cienega? You said that of all the areas, was it resource based? Was it species endangerment based? Was it
well, it was
ability to preserve based?
The NGOs, on both sides, and there are more like, I don't know, more than 5 groups.
So SEDO?
Well, SEDO is working. EDF. Well, let me go from Mexican side. That's the way I can. Well, SEDO, in kind of the lower part of the delta, no? More of the marine coastal areas. Then we have Pronatura Noroeste. Osbel in Ojosa, who, we work together with Carlos Valdez in Guaymas. So we are pretty good friends. There is a local organization called the Ecological Association of Users of the Hardy and Colorado Rivers, IORIC, based in Mexicali.
Who's running that? Or who's?
Florentino Flores, who is a fisherman.
Okay.
It's really a local organization. And Javier Mosqueda, who is now they do have a tourist camp along the Hardy River, the Mosqueda family. Then we have Proesteros, who has done work also in the Delta.
Now so they had been further south in Mexico and have then...
Yeah, Proesteros is based in Ensenada, and they usually, most of their project, I think, is on the Pacific side of Baja. But for the last 8 years, they've been doing, small projects, mainly with the Cucapa, del Mayor. And then the universities, of course, CIAD, Dr. Jacqueline Garcia, in Guaymas. She was a student here, did a master's and a PhD too.
Under Ed Glenn?
With Ed Glenn.
Yeah,
so
I remember
she goes
her.
back to, 1996, 95. And she's part of this monitoring team for the Cienega. The UABC, or the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California in Mexicali, and also the campus in Ensenada. There are different people that are involved in the Delta. And Dr. Jorge Ramirez, who is a hydrologist in the campus Mexicali. He's kind of new, for the last 4 years, but since then has been, really involved in issues and added, something that we didn't have, which was the hydrology component. I don't want to miss anyone. Well, of course, then we have some of the state agencies in Marta Roman, who is based in San Luis. She works for a state agency who used to be IMADES. Now it has a different name. I forgot the name. CEDES is the acronym.
And Marta was she part of Centro Ecológico?
Yeah.
She was trained under that Nature Conservancy connection with Samuel Ocaña.
And she is the wife of Jose Campoy, who is the director of the Upper Gulf, Biosphere Reserve.
No?
So
these were the young, upcoming people that were being trained, both in the U.S. I was young and upcoming as well, but in the U.S. and Mexico. Then I was talking with, we mentioned David Yetman yesterday.
Yeah, and she's there, and she's also part of the monitoring team for the Cienega. So there's a large number of NGOs and institutions. Mm-hmm. Sonoran Institute, we do have an office in Mexicali too. So
oh, you do?
We are, we're not a Mexican organization there yet. I mean, we're in the process of establishing as a Mexican organization. But we do have an office there, and we opened the office in, I think it was 2004. So, and then the state agencies and federal agencies. And in terms of NGOs in the U.S., well, EDF certainly has played
Joaquin's now there, so.
Yeah, a key role. But we have, National Wildlife Federation. We have Defenders of Wildlife, Pacific Institute.
Oh, interesting.
TNC it's also participating more and more on kind of basin-wide projects in the Delta too.
Who at TNC?
She's in.
Was Victoria or?
No, she's a new person.
Oh.
I think she's based in Phoenix, or I think she's in Phoenix. I forgot.
Because I just worked way back when with Susan Anderson and.
Oh well, Susan is still there, but they have a new program. They have a new program for the entire basin or the lower Colorado River Basin.
Okay.
And they hire a new person to lead that program.
Okay.
But Susan is still part of the Mexican program.
Research. Yeah, she's the director.
Yeah. Who else? Well, in other groups, I mean the state agencies, water agencies in Arizona, Nevada, and California. The U of A, of course, has been involved.
What about Park Service, USGS? Is BLM there, or is it mostly?
No, it's more Bureau of Reclamation. Bureau of Reclamation, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Not so much Park Service.
It's not really a park on the other side.
No. The park that is kind of the sister park with the Biosphere Reserve in Mexico is, I think it's Imperial Wildlife Refuge.
Oh, okay.
So it's not along the border, but it's not that far.
Yeah.
I don't know, 100 miles maybe. So really it's a large group. And
you asked the question, why the Cienega Debris?
Yeah, no, why there as opposed to...
Well, let me go back a little bit. In 2002, a group of NGOs organized a workshop in Tijuana, and we called it it was a conservation priorities workshop. It was an effort to identify the key areas in the Delta with opportunities for conservation or restoration. Well, not only opportunities, but that needed attention in terms of protecting these areas or restoring these areas. And it wasn't only NGOs or universities. We have participants from the water agencies and the state and federal governments from both sides. So it was
the Sonoran Institute sort of hosted this.
The Sonoran Institute, yes, and Environmental Defense.
This was in
2002.
2002.
In Tijuana.
But the history of this area goes way back to before the biosphere was even established, right? I mean, Ed Gwynn was down there doing field work and raising issues, and I mean,
I don't know details of that,
history.
but certainly there were people working in the area before.
Was this post to that letter of intent that was written after the biospheres were created? Because I was at Sonoran Institute just before this began to be developed.
Yeah, I think there was in 2000 there was...
Because there was 2 letters of intent as a result of the biosphere that were done between the U.S. and Mexico. And that was sort of, I thought Luther was using as a launching point because it gave credibility to the NGOs being at the table.
Well, what I remember there was a new minute 206 or 306.
I think it's 206.
206?
I may be wrong, but I know what you're talking about. I've read about it, but you're making it come
I think
alive.
it's 306.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 306 because 242 is about the salinity. That was 1970.
Right.
So minute 306 was signed, I think, in December 2000, I think. And that one opened kind of the door for, binational, more binational collaboration about environmental issues. So, and there were other workshops before the one we organized. Like SILA and IBWC organized a workshop, in 2001, 9/11. We were in Mexicali in a workshop, and many people couldn't go back.
Yeah.
In fact, the workshop was kind of canceled because many people were trying to just go back to the U.S. before they closed the borders. So after that, there was workshops, meetings before that. But really the one in 2002 was the first that the objective was to identify these areas. And the way we want to put it, or like to put it, is that we the entire group, we have like 55 participants, the map of the possible. That's what we call it. So really those areas that could be either protected because they were in good condition, like the Cienega, or areas that needed to be restored, and there were real opportunities to restore those areas. So in the workshop, we identify those and identify key actions for each one of those areas. And a couple of years later, we presented this report to at that point was the 4 working group, the binational working group, and they kind of accepted the report as kind of the guide, as a guide for the conservation and protection of the delta. So that was, I think, late 2004, early 2005. And since then, we really began a more, intense and more. There was more cooperation, collaboration between, Mexico and the U.S., NGOs and government, state, federal government, and because we had a pretty good idea what the opportunities were to protect and restore these areas.
What about funding? I sort of thought about that yesterday. Did that also then bring funding, and is funding being moved between organizations on both sides of the border, or does the funding just come up to the border?
Did the working group have any support for itself? Does the IBWC provide some?
In terms of funding, we could divide this into more of the private, foundation or individuals, and government funding. At the very beginning, well, not the very beginning, but in the early 2000 to 2005, it was mainly, I think, foundation support for NGOs working in the Delta.
Who are then funding stuff in Mexico, or supporting that, or is it funding the U.S. NGOs are using?
It was funding for both, I think. It was funding coming from going to NGOs in Mexico and also NGOs like Sonoran Institute in the U.S., but to do work in Mexico.
Okay.
So, for example, the Sonoran Institute has received great support from the PACA Foundation for the Delta Project. And for us, without the support from the PACA Foundation, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
Because we have been getting support, every year. And that's really what it takes.
Right.
For a region like the Delta that requires, continuous funding. There is a lot of, it's difficult to not difficult to describe. It will take time to describe, but what has happened in almost 10 years. And I mean, I've been involved, and I have seen the change on how NGOs have been able to provide information and now participate in binational meetings.
Right.
So you see this as a very progressive and positive experience.
Yeah, certainly.
So the sort of the rise of the intellect as well, and the knowledge base and the organizational architecture structure in Mexico is something that you've seen build for 10 years or so.
Right. Well, not only Mexico, but the collaboration among NGOs is really strong and has evolved and has developed. And knowledge about the Delta. A key thing is on-the-ground actions, because before 2002, there were no restoration projects. So we were talking about, we need to protect these, we need to restore these, but everything was, that's impossible, the Delta, there's no water.
Right.
I mean, why should we do this? So as we increase knowledge about, the species, the habitats, the water need for these different habitats, we were able to begin with restoration projects. I think the first one was 2001, and since then we have, I don't know how many restoration projects we have now, but we have more than 12, 13 restoration projects.
And where do the people who work on those projects come from? Are they people in Mexico, or are they students who come from here? Who are the people?
Both. Like, for example, our Sonoran Institute, we have a staff of 8 people in Mexico. And 7 of them are from the local communities. Natura has a staff of about the same, maybe a little more, maybe 10. And I think most of them, maybe at least 80% of them, are from the local communities.
And Natura is funded mostly by businesses. Is that still true, or are they getting foundation funding? Because
it's I think it's mainly foundation and
Mexico Foundation, though, or
both.
is it U.S. both? Okay.
It's both. It's in Mexico is the Fondo Mexicano para la Conservación de la Naturaleza. And in the U.S. they have different. They're getting support from different foundations. The most recent one is the Walter Family Foundation.
Oh, interesting.
They have worked with Natura, and for the last at least 3 or 4 years.
So typically that's been business interests in Mexico that then see value of supporting the NGOs and conservation in Mexico.
Yeah,
that was something Susan had been really, 20 years ago, had really been pushing Mexico to develop, was that sense of...
Well, Natura has a strong board,
exactly.
and they get involved in what the institution is doing and support that. And I have been working with also in Ojosa from Natura with board members that have spent time working with those to define or to help us to define some of the projects and activities. So
I don't want to go ahead. I don't want to get us off the subject, but in thinking about what you've been saying, it's clear that governmental institutions and foundations are really important here in providing both a forum and maybe some initiative for these things. I mean, that's the story that I think you're saying. On the other hand, the other thing that's woven in here is the importance of individuals, particularly professors in one place or another, who have students who then go on to do these things. Do you think each of these things is equally important? Is one more important than the other? Does it take the people to foster the linkages and to develop the students before these institutions can do anything, or is it the institutions that provide the spark? How do you think that plays out, at least in your experience?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood the question, but
well, I'm not sure I did either.
So you're asking if
people or these institutions?
Or the institutions.
It's like chicken or the egg. What came first, or what has to be? What's an essential ingredient, or the whole thing doesn't work?
Well, I think both. I mean, I think, NGOs.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it this way. In terms of NGOs, I think the people, the individual working in those NGOs were key. I mean, they were passionate about the work. They have the knowledge about the region, the people, the habitat. We actually were able to really develop a really nice team, and we complemented, each other.
Yeah.
So I would think that the institutions were important. I mean, they were working for these NGOs.
Mm-hmm.
But the people, I think, were key. In terms of the institutions and other institutions, I think it's a combination of some key people on those, government institutions that play an important role in allowing kind of the group or the collaboration. And of course, the institution itself, like WWC and CILA, it was the framework to develop this collaboration.
Yeah.
Without that, I mean, I don't know, it would be a lot more difficult to do it.
Great. That's exactly. I'm glad I asked the question.
Legitimacy?
Well, in a way, they do. I mean, we cannot do anything kind of outside, especially when you look at binational collaboration. In this case, IWC and CILA, they have to be a key players there. In fact, that's why they are leading this binational group. But, there is something that we were able to do, NGOs, to be able to, I wouldn't say put pressure, but we were able to support or request to participate in the binational discussion. Because before 2010 now.
Yeah.
Say before 2008, 2007, our participation in the binational discussions were not on a regular basis. We could get an invitation here or there, but in 2008 we began kind of a collaboration with the state agencies, because they wanted to do some work, and they have an interest on binational projects. And then a few months later, IWC and CILA kind of realized, they are kind of working together. We should bring these into kind of official binational collaboration. And so since then we have been doing that, and this process is called the Colorado River Joint Cooperative Process. And it's Mexico, U.S. and NGOs from Mexico and the U.S. And it's really well structured. They have 4 working groups. They have a core group, and each working group has a list of projects or issues, and then they meet and they present that to the core group, and they start making decisions. And it was part of that the decision was made about the Cienega Santa Clara.
Okay.
Because the Yuma desalting plant has been, as you know, always, I guess the Arizona some of the state agencies have been, mainly Arizona, had an interest on, operating the human desalting plant for years.
Forever.
But in the last few years, that interest increased because of the drought. And so one of the first issues about the national group of this cooperative process had to resolve was what to do with the Cienega, and so they reached an agreement about, okay, if you want to operate the human desalting plant, which is operating now, for a year at 30% capacity, the agreement was, okay, let's try that and see, because they have specific objectives. They wanted to see, is it working, how expensive it is to run the plant, and so the group said, okay, let's do it, but let's ensure that there is no impact on the Cienega. And two key agreements, or two key resolutions, where one is the monitoring program. We need to implement this monitoring program to see if there are any impacts. And two, we need to replace the water during that year. We need to, the water that will be used by the plant and it won't be going to the Cienega, we need to replace that from other sources of water.
Where have those sources come from?
The U.S. is putting 30%, well, 1/3, Mexico 1/3, and NGOs 1/3. And each one has, their own source for the water. The U.S. is using, I think, a combination of excess flows or excess water in the system.
If there is such a thing.
Yeah, and maybe groundwater. And Mexico well, they did the same. Some excess water, after the earthquake, there was excess water because the canals broke, and they didn't have a way to distribute the water, so they sent a little bit of that water to the Cienega. But I think they're going to lease water rights to meet their contribution. And for NGOs, we are also leasing and buying water rights. But it's the first time that Mexico and U.S. allocate water for the environment in the Delta.
How does it look, the Cienega?
Oh, it looks great. And right now it's, it has been, the human desalting plant has been in operation only for, 27 days? No, 24 days. So it's too early to see if there are any impacts. But right now it looks great.
Where are they putting the salty water?
They are sending it out to the Cienega. But since the replacement water considers that there will be higher salinity, so the replacement water has to be of better salinity to be able to, when it mixes with this, will be the same salinity as.
And is there enough baseline so that you'll be able to tell the impact?
Yeah, there is, because who was that? I think the UOA in 2006.
Is this Flesa and Glenn, or?
It was mainly Carl Flesa and Jacqueline Garcia in Mexico. They began with support. I think it was from Arizona. Maybe it was CAP, Central Arizona. The plant operated for 3 months at 10% capacity. So they implemented a monitoring program at that time, before and after. So really, the U of A, with support from the water agencies, has been doing the monitoring in the Cienega since 2006.
Okay.
So there is data.
There's enough.
This new effort, what it does is increases the number of sampling sites. So there is a better distribution of sites in the Cienega, and also new parameters. But there is data since 2006 for the Cienega, and even before, but really the monitoring program is 2006.
And you haven't seen any disruption of these kind of collaborative programs in the last year when clearly relations have not been as positive in that more global sense. This thing continues on underground in the sense of undisturbed.
I think the collaboration has improved and it's really good.
Why is that when there's such backlash in so many other areas?
Well,
September 11th, this recent stuff, there's just been such a border fence.
I think what you have here is that, in the past, it was mainly Mexico or NGOs requesting or asking for more water or for support to restore these areas, right? So it was mainly, NGOs. And of course, Mexico, I'm sure the state or federal government had issues about, water quality and other issues with the U.S. in the past. But since, this decade, we have seen a decrease in the water availability in the system. So there is an interest, or there is how to put it, an interest from the U.S. to find ways to ensure that there is enough water in the system to meet the demand,
Without big environmental.
Well, without not only with environmental impacts, but I think one of the real options is to work with Mexico to find or to do water conservation projects, desalination projects.
Okay.
There is a real opportunity that U.S. could, collaborate with Mexico to implement these projects, and both countries will benefit. So there is an interest from the U.S. And I think that has helped.
And it's resource, i.e. water-based.
Right.
Drinking water or agriculture, either, right?
It's mainly for drinking water because the agriculture in both sides, the U.S. and Mexico, they use about 80% of the water. So it's really the key is to be able to meet the demand for urban uses.
And so it's treaty-based in the sense that they're looking at the treaty commitments. Is that?
I think it's in part, yeah. It's because part of the problem is that the treaty doesn't specify that both countries will suffer the shortages.
Right.
But it doesn't say by how much.
Right. Nor the quality.
Right.
Quality issues are.
That doesn't provide really details.
Right.
And
you think this cooperation happens in spite of such things as the All-American Canal, where there clearly hasn't been cooperation? Did that have any?
Well, in fact, I think what the All-American Canal did, certainly we or groups didn't want to see the same thing happening in this discussion as happened with the All-American Canal, where there was no collaboration, and Mexico, I think, lost that opportunity to find ways to mitigate or to find ways to help the farmers and the agencies to mitigate for those impacts.
Okay.
They spent a lot of money on litigation, and so we didn't want to see the same thing happening in this other collaboration, because it was really it wasn't just one particular issue. It was really the entire delta. It was the water. It was the environment.
Okay, so I just want to be sure that I've got it right, that you see this as a pretty positive story over the 10 years or so you've been involved, because you see these institutions opening up, people engaging in real restoration projects on the ground involving local people, and collaboration happening in a more cooperative mode, with both sides seeing some mutual kind of advantage. So that you see it is in general positive terms.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And there are
power dynamic.
There are see this binational process, the working groups. There are 4 working groups, and for example, one of those is looking for water conservation, potential projects for water conservation.
Mm-hmm.
When you say power dynamic?
Well, one of the things in the border, you have a U.S. push for something, maybe an NGO or community or state government or federal government. They want something. And so the power dynamic from U.S. Mexico typically is not equal. But in this case, it seems like there's mutual interests and that the Mexico side of it is as strong as the U.S. side, which is not what we've heard typically can.
Yeah, I think for Mexico, there are different things, but one, in terms of the environment, something that Mexico did, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was to really present to the U.S. that the environment was a key component of these binational discussions. Mm-hmm. That they wouldn't consider, collaboration or in water issues without also considering the environment.
Who was involved in that? Was it Relaciones Exteriores? Somebody?
Who did it? Well, I think
Alberto Secoli is the only person.
Oh no, he hasn't been involved.
Okay.
For a long time. I haven't seen him or heard his name.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I met with him in 2002 after a workshop.
He's amazing.
But since then,
yeah,
I don't know where he is right now. Is he still in Mexico City?
Yeah, and still talking about these things.
Well,
yeah,
I think it was the National Water Commission.
Okay.
The National Water Commission, and probably the Commissioner Herrera.
Yeah.
At that time.
I think so too. God, good.
But it was clear because it was a clear message because last year in Santa Fe, there is a binational conference, and a lot of people from the U.S. were saying, we are collaborating with Mexico. We have really good relations with Mexico, and we are trying to find ways to protect the environment. And they know. I think NGOs and universities, and going back to Glenn in the probably 80s or early 90s, all of that knowledge, all of that is kind of paying off. It's now the Mexico and the U.S. understand the importance of the region. They understand what needs to be done, and how can we balance environment with meeting the needs of the agricultural sector, and the urban needs of water.
Well, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier of having students that then come up here that are kind of inculcated in field studies, and so then they go back, and then they're in positions of power.
Well, yeah, you can see it that way. I mean, Jacqueline was one, Oswald,
yourself,
myself, and certainly there are more students.
Yeah, Carlos. I mean, they're just.
So it's a sort of invasion of the Mexicans into U.S. NGOs. I'm just teasing, but it's an interesting phenomenon that the sensitivities may come from Mexican students who spent time here.
Yeah. And in my case I'm here, so I was actually there after I finished, and then came here, and.
But you were here, and then you went there, and then you came back. So
right. So
open door.
And for me, I'm a Mexican, but I'm working here at Sonoran Institute. Even though we have an office in Mexicali, we are not a Mexican organization. So in the latest discussions, the last year on the binational process, I'm not being as involved as in the past because the group got a little close.
Inbred.
Because they were really trying to look at making decisions. And so, they had to follow protocols. So NGOs in Mexico, it was Pro Natura.
Yeah.
And in the U.S. is Jennifer Pitt from Environmental Defense Fund. And so I was kind of in the middle. Sometimes I mean, I have pretty good relationship with Mexican institutions. Francisco Bernal from SILA is a good friend. People from Conagua, the state government. I mean, we do have a lot of projects with the state government. And so going back to that question about is a person or is, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, because you cannot. Certainly, the person makes a difference, but they have the support from the institution.
It's pushing that just a little bit further about the people. There seems to be one part of it is cultural. People who have roots in both worlds. The other may be a sense of place, a love of the place. And when I was talking to Luther the other day, he said, you'd just be amazed. Some of these places have the environmental values of this brick floor. And I thought, well, then why do you love this place? What is it about this place that makes it so special? Do you think there is a collective sense of what the Upper Gulf and what the Cienega are all about, a vision that sort of people have of what it could be or what it once was? Is there some iconic or image in people's minds about this?
You mean people outside the agencies? Or?
No, I'm talking about driving the people who get involved in this. I know you went through this process of identifying the Cienega, but there's got to have been not just the evaluative number of species kind of component, but a sense of this is where I want to spend my life. I mean, you spent 10 years of your life.
Well, yeah, I think that there is a sense of love for nature and what nature offers to people, not only as a way to survive in terms of food, but as a way to appreciate nature. And I think that's why education is so important, because that's why education is a key part of what we do. I always tell people, well, not always, but when there is an opportunity, I go back when I was a kid, and my parents, or my father will take us to camping or fishing or hiking, and Jacques Cousteau made a key impact on at least in my case. That's why I went to study oceanography, and I don't know if we're having the same impact now with the new generations. That's why in our projects we have one key component is outreach. We bring kids from secondary school, high school, and even members of the community to our restoration projects. And they plant trees, they see the trees grow, they do a boat trip. Many people there don't know that there is a river.
Right.
Or they just heard that from the grandparents, but they haven't been there. And for many years, this idea, no, the delta is dead. There is nothing to to really protect or to conserve. I think many people still think that, but I think we are changing that perspective. But for the people working there, I think is, well, I mean, I can speak for myself. I can't speak for other people, but it's just the satisfaction to contribute to protect an important place.
Okay.
Is the alegría or the joy that I get when I see kids playing or fishing, or when I see people enjoying the river, or when I see like Juan Butron in the Cienega Santa Clara trying to protect the Cienega and get to see his face on both sides, when he's sad because something happened, or when he's happy because things are coming along well. So I think it's just trying to give back a little bit of what we were able to, to have in life.
Well, this is not an easy place to work. I mean, it's not an easy place to live. It's not an easy environment. It's demanding.
Right.
And things don't come easily. The money doesn't flow in. The attention doesn't flow in.
Right.
So, and you talk about the love of place, but is persistence and determination also part of it? This is not one of these things where you can fly in from outside and reap the profits and go away a hero.
Right.
Maybe some groups do, but...
No, here I think, at least for us, Sonoran Institute, the key, and I'm sure for Pronatura and others, has been the persistence, For the initial years were difficult, Mm-hmm. We could do the research, we can identify how many birds, how many species, but the other part, the institutional part,
mm-hmm.
the support from U.S. Mexico wasn't there at the beginning. I mean, we met with them, we talked about it, but there wasn't really
buy-in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But now we really see a difference, and it's really. I mean, I didn't mention this, but for the last 2 years, we have received support from government agencies on both sides for our restoration projects. And the agreement to replace the water to the Cienega, I mean, it's really significant.
Is that this water trust, the replacement water for the Cienega?
Well,
what's the water trust?
Well, the water trust was something NGOs created to secure a flow for the river, and we are leasing or mainly buying water rights. That's a kind of a private.
That's different.
That's different. That's a private mechanism.
That's quite different. Okay.
But the 1/3 of the water that NGOs needs to replace, we're going to use the water trust to replace that.
Okay.
Okay, and the U.S. Mexico will use other mechanisms, but so it's helping us, but also has been recognized by the U.S. and Mexico as a valid mechanism, because at the beginning we didn't know how people will see, what people will think about, the water trust.
Yeah.
And now, people know about it. Most of the people think it's a great mechanism.
Yeah.
And so, no, we haven't found any complaints or any big issues, or no issues at all.
Good.
And, so.
Well, this has really been a great interview.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
We can, continue. But.
Sure. No, we're not finished.
I have one of the other questions. We were talking a little bit about the characteristics of the people who are transborder, can work in both countries. Is bilinguality important? We've talked about being educated in both places, maybe having an institutional home in one or the other place that has linkages, funding, charismatic, you used that word. Is bilinguality essential?
Yeah, I think it's essential, and being able to, understand, but also, communicate.
So cultural sensitivity.
Yeah, I think it's both. It's just the language is one thing, but be able to understand also the culture. Of course, from Mexico we understand the culture there, but because we spend time in the U.S., we also we understand some of the culture here, and. A good example would be, a meeting starts at 8. Well, it starts at 8. Right? In Mexico, it's not that we are late on purpose. We go there. Oh, how you doing? How's your family? What's this? What did you do last weekend? So it's the first few minutes. It's just
Yes.
And here 8. Okay, 8. Let's start the meeting. I mean, it's just. So you understand the culture, and I can tell you that the agencies in Mexico, and you see more people that in Mexico that speak English than people in the U.S. that speak Spanish.
Yeah.
That's why most of the meetings are actually in English, I think. Although in this process they do have,
The simultaneous
translation. Because of there are key issues that need to be discussed that they want to be able to do it in their own language. But some of the agencies, you can see that if someone from Mexico that speaks good English comes to a meeting, it has a great impact.
What a relief!
Yeah, because especially if he knows what he's talking about, the technical part, and he's able to communicate. People in the U.S. Oh wow! I mean, we know. I mean, we understand now that particular issue, for example. But also see that there are some people that speak some English, but they are as fluent. It takes more time, and so I think language is key, and but also understand the culture. And some of the students, many of the people in the NGOs are young. Well, I'm still young. So I don't know. We have energy, or we
vibrance.
Have,
Do you think, how essential has it been that you have Mexicans in U.S. organizations like yourself, for example, bringing that whole? Because I know when I started the Mexico program here at Sonoran Institute, it was me, Anglo, not even very equipped with Spanish language. I think I did pretty well to get things started, but then we brought Joaquin Murrieta in, and now suddenly we actually had, it's a different. We learned a lot from that as well.
I mean, I think
is that essential?
I think I don't know if that's essential, but certainly it helps a lot, and it makes things a lot easier, because you are better from the very beginning. You are well received by the institutions in Mexico, I mean, agencies or partners, because you can speak. I mean, at the moment you say, "Well, I'm from Mexico too. I'm Mexican."
Yeah,
you are well received.
You're home.
Yeah. And but also it has to do with the personality of the. I think we had I can speak again for myself and the Sonoran Institute. We have been 100% honest and passionate and committed to our work, and I think people see that. And an example is that we started in 2002, and so 2008 was still, actually not before that. I think it was Mark Briggs 97 or 98 with Steve Cornelius.
It was right when I was leaving.
So
Luther said, "We're doing the Upper Gulf," and I said, "I'm leaving, so have fun." But then Joaquin came in, Mark moved over.
Mark was here, I think Steve
Cornelius.
Right, and I think it takes that because again, it's not an easy place to work. You don't see, the river flowing. You don't see the way it used to be. But you find people that were there before, before Glen Canyon Dam, before, I don't know, Hoover Dam. Well, yeah, and they tell you about dolphins in Campo Mosqueda, turtles, the Totoaba. They tell you about this and that.
So there's recent history of what it was.
Yeah, one thing we haven't talked about is the involvement of indigenous people, native people in all this. Are they involved in any way in what's going on here?
They are. They are in different ways.
Okay.
Different levels.
Kokopah?
The Kokopah. We recently finished a project working with Joaquin's project, and he could tell you more about it. It's the mapping of the Kuapa land or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it's a project to kind of document the traditional land and culture or I guess traditions of the we call it Kuapa because it was really Kuapa represents both the U.S. and Mexican. they are separated by the border where they were, and also the name, Cucapa in Mexico and Cocapa, in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things, work to separate the two, even though they have relatives on both sides. And so we use Cuapa because that's how some really people reference their tribe. And so they in that project they work to kind of document or rescue some of the key cultural aspects of the tribe. And
good.
In this local organization, one of the staff members is from the Cucapa community. In fact, we have one field person that is Cucapa too. He's a fisherman and works for us in the Cienega.
Mm.
One other thing that's the importance of field work. We talked earlier about the sort of involvement in restoration. But is there something about working together in the field that's important to these collaborative relationships?
Yeah, I think the underground restoration work certainly has an impact on people, especially people from the outside. Talking about this binational process, that they are able to see, restoration is happening or can be done in Mexico. So that's clear. And we have had many tours to these areas with, the binational group. They did at least a couple tours. But more in the community, like, we have 7 people from the communities working for us. And they communicate with, their families, their friends.
Okay.
And then, they are kind of spreading the word and knowledge about what's happening. And there are at least a few cases where some of the owners of tourist camps began, to do kind of restoration projects and improvements to the tourist camp because they saw what we did in other areas.
So, and you're supporting them financially?
Some of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's
another agency that, and this is really state government, not state government, really government support from 1997. I think it was the first grant to Pro Natura, actually to ITESM at that time. It was the North American Wetlands Conservation Act.
Oh, okay.
They have been supporting our work in the Delta since, again, 97.
Mm-hmm.
And this year we're beginning a new grant.
Mm.
So kind of every other
American
year.
Wetlands Conservation Act.
The North American Wetlands Conservation Act.
And that's Fish and Wildlife money?
Yeah.
Are there people in the Fish and Wildlife Service that are really involved in this that we could talk to?
Yeah,
well, you can talk to Ellen Murphy. She's in charge of the NAUCA program in Mexico.
Okay.
She's in D.C.
Where is she?
D.C.,
okay.
And the other person that is very familiar and is Sam Spiller. He's in Phoenix. I think he's regional director or something like that. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Okay.
Great. You said something about people in the Bureau of Reclamation. Are there people we should... I used to know everyone, but that's been a long time ago.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Bureau of Reclamation. We're in the process of, I don't know exactly when, maybe before 2002, the multi-species conservation program was developing, or was being created, and NGOs were part of that. But they decided to leave the group because the MSCP, this conservation program, didn't consider Mexico as a potential area for projects, and it didn't consider stream flows as part of the some of the activities. So they were just, doing restoration.
This was on the Colorado
on the
whole.
Yeah, it was on the lower basin.
Yeah, I remember that.
So there was, my particular opinion is, we lost an opportunity there. For me, I don't like to make those decisions.
Right.
Well, you don't like it, I'll leave. Or
Yeah.
I think anyway, but we were able to, through the different mechanisms, the binational process, to kind of establish kind of a new relationship with them and propose to MSCP, you should consider projects in Mexico. So they're in the process of doing that.
That's good.
And they'll be doing one pilot project in this year, I think, with Pronatura. So that's another example of, support from in this case, the federal government. Well, it's really MSCP's federal government and state government.
Right. It's interesting, though, because clearly the Bureau of Reclamation had a lot to do with hiding and not consulting about the All-American Canal. So to see it come around to this point, that's quite a turnaround.
Well, I work, Lori Gray is now I think, regional director, regional director. Anyway, she used to be the head or in charge of the MSCP program and move up. So, I know her and we talk about the issues. But then Terry Murphy is really the technical person on MSCP for restoration. And we're in the process of looking at, also opportunities to do projects in Mexico. So after they do this pilot project, if everything goes well, it will open the door for... And, the nice thing about MSCP is that they like to do, or they prefer to do bigger, longer-term projects.
Right.
3 to 5 years, not 10 acres. They want to do 200, 500, 1,000 acres.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to say, we had an interview with a really old-timer on the border to finish up our evening last night. We began at 5. And he was so down, I think, and so pessimistic. And it's just great to start the morning.
Because I was going to actually ask, so you're hopeful then? You just see things beginning now?
I think the way I put this is that this is the time for the Delta.
We've got the framework.
We build it. Yeah. We build the framework, the trust, the knowledge in the last 15 years, and it just happens that because of the drought, sometimes when there is a crisis, there is also opportunities, and it kind of allow or kind of force Mexico and the U.S. to develop this binational cooperative process. So I think this is it for the Delta. If we don't secure or implement the mechanisms to continue with the restoration, with securing water, now it will be really difficult to do it in the future. But I'm optimistic that we are in a good direction now.
And so, what do you think is going to be the thing or things needed so that if things suddenly we get all kinds of rain and what do you feel like you need to set up so that if we're in a hiatus, the Delta will be okay? What's the goal then? Is it institutional? Is it relationship? Is it research? Is it funding forever?
I think it will be key things. Several things, but one will be institutional. IPWC, SILA, Mexico, U.S. will have to create a new minute.
Okay, so a minute, great. Not a treaty, a minute?
A minute it essentially becomes part of the treaty.
Okay.
That will say, Mexico, U.S. will work together to secure a base flow and a post flow. Essentially, the way we have presented this is NGOs are already working to secure a base flow. by the water trust, to the water trust. And, Mexico and U.S. have expressed interest or express, interest and support to look at opportunities to secure the post-flow. So the minute will allow the U.S. and Mexico to put water in Lake Mead and then release it to the delta when it's needed. So we really need that the minute will establish that mechanism. Okay. Right now, U.S. and Mexico, for the first time, Mexico spent a lot of money and time developing the model, the hydrological model that the U.S. has been using to manage the system. So Mexico developed that and then incorporated the Mexican part to be able to look at different scenarios. So, and one of the things they are doing is how can they secure a post-flow? And so they're looking, okay, what will happen if we do this? Well, this will happen. So really, what I like to see is that Mexico and U.S. agree on ways to secure a post-flow, that it will be established in the minute. I will say, we can put water in Lake Mead for a later use to the delta.
Right.
And not only that, that also, maybe NGOs or any individual could contribute to that. The other one is, MSCP. MSCP is a lower basin, and the border, well, that. Birds and wildlife don't, now they see the fence, right? But birds could fly. And anyway, Mexico should be part of MSCP. It provides, the opportunities for restoration in Mexico are the same or even better than the U.S. And it makes sense to really, it's like you
especially if these are migratory species.
Right, you diversify your investments, right? Instead of putting everything on a small region, and it's better to have different stopover sites along that corridor. So that's another thing that I would like to see. I could, bring the fund that is needed to scale up the restoration in Mexico. And that, of course, will provide jobs for, local people too.
And should the minute include anything regarding quality? Or are you not even going to try to?
Well, yeah, I guess quality is a factor. It's not the key component, but if it is delivered by the river, it should meet the,
I think
the treaty already.
Yeah, it's already has part of the treaty requires anything.
But there was issues of other chemicals in the water that when I was at EPA was an issue for the Colorado. Mexico had raised those when I was working at
Certainly
EPA.
there will be an issue of quality, but I haven't really heard any big issues other than the Cienega about salinity. Other things that, on the Mexican side, I think Mexico has also a lot to contribute in terms of, securing water for the river. So this is now, we have an opportunity now for Mexico to also contribute.
Right.
They are, a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, there was an agreement with the state government to secure water from the wastewater treatment plant. 30% of that water.
This is Mexicali.
In Mexicali. So an example would be, if that could be expanded, and instead of 30%, we could secure 60%, which will benefit the Howdy River, the local economy.
Right.
Of course, the water has to be quality there is a key is a key component there. But
that's great.
What else? Well, the other part is this is something we have been working with the U of A and other partners, reconnecting the river with the ocean, and I think there are real opportunities. This is another
people will think, well, gee, that's impossible, and there is no way to even, get involved in that. But we're just beginning, learning more and more, and really reconnecting will allow marine species to go upstream, reproduce and grow and then come back. That connectivity right now is lost, not only because of lack of water, but there is a physical barrier. It's a sandbar. So if you were able to remove that sandbar, or at least a portion of that, with the same water, you will have more days where the ocean will be connected with the river, just because have the high tides will be able to connect. So it's some of the things that just it takes time to understand and then implement. But I think that's another thing, a real opportunity.
And a lot of these are on the Mexican side, and like the removal of the sandbar.
Yeah, that would be Mexican side. Yeah, but some of the species, like shorebirds, for example, the U.S. has an interest also in some of those species.
Yeah.
So
it just, again, we were talking about sort of ideal and vision, just connecting the Colorado to the Pacific, or I can see the campaign that you can launch around
river to the sea.
Yeah, it's very sexy.
Yeah, we call it reconnecting the river. In fact, we call it reconnecting the ocean with the river. And the reason is because people tend to work in the marine component, only the fisheries, only the management, vaquita, but really nothing about the river, about increasing river flows to enhance habitat. So that's why we call it. Well, we need to reconnect, the ocean or the sea with the river, and.
It's just given the oil spill in Louisiana, you could see sort of such a positive construct around.
Yeah. Well, and even in the Gulf, Ezequiel had a journal article with, I think, Octavio Burto about the benefits of mangroves for some of the fisheries.
He's mentioned that.
And I'm surprised that people haven't looked at, what happened. Well, there have been, some research on that, but on the importance of the river flows, the Colorado River flows to the marine species, but there hasn't been really much about trying to restore that, or protect that area. But have Curvina, shrimp, Tatuaba. So you will think that people will even just the shrimp.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Terrific.
Great.
Thank you so much for taking so much time.
This is really terrific for us.